Year 9 and welcome to today's video. What we're going to be looking at is how to make a really clear and clever point to open a PMU paragraph. So we're just looking at the P section of PMU and exploring how to write a good point, okay? So in your English book you need to do a title. We're just going to call this Making Clear Points, and whatever date it is, don't forget to pop that down as well. You can do the short date. Okay, on my screen here, what you'll be able to see is an article which I've just taken off the UN website about gender equality. Now, it's not one of the ones in the booklet, because you're going to be asked this week to be looking at the Emma Watson article, and I'm not going to do the same one because I'll take lots of ideas. Instead, I've just picked out this. I'm just going to use a short part of it for a question and just to talk you through how to make clear points. So what we're going to start with is, let's write our question down. So you can just do this at the top of your screen, top of your book even. So the question is, what is the UN's opinion on gender equality? Okay, so that's the question. So if you write that down, what we're going to do now is just briefly read the article. And what we need to be looking at when we read a text and we have a question ready is we're looking for evidence and our ideas that will answer the question. So we're kind of looking for two things: evidence that backs up what we think and actually coming up with those ideas of what we think. So, gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. So straight away, we can see that the UN think that gender equality is something that everybody deserves. And we also can see that they think it leads to a better world. Okay, so we've got two ideas in that very first paragraph. There has been progress over the last decades. More girls are going to school, fewer girls are forced into early marriage, more women are serving in parliament and positions of leadership, and laws are being reformed to advance gender equality. So there's a list of examples there, but the main thing that they're saying is that they think there's been progress, okay? Despite these gains, many challenges remain. Discriminatory laws and social norms remain pervasive. Women continue to be underrepresented at all levels of political leadership, and 1 in 5 women and girls between the ages of 15 and 49 report experiencing physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner within a 12-month period. So what they're saying is, if we look at that very first point, and then they've given lots of evidence for it, what they're saying is that yes, there has been progress, but there are still issues with gender equality and it's still not equal. We'll look at the next paragraph. The effect of the COVID-19 pandemic could reverse the limited progress that has been made on gender equality and women's rights. The coronavirus outbreak exacerbates, that means that makes worse, existing inequalities for women and girls across every sphere, from health and the economy to security and social protection. So the main focus of that is what the pandemic has done to equality. I'm not going to read that final paragraph. So what we've got there is 4 little paragraphs which all kind of focus on a different element of what the UN believes about gender equality in 2021, okay? And what we're going to talk about now is, first of all, we're just going to go through some tips of how to write a really clear point, and then we're going to write some examples based on that article. Okay, so back to your book. You should have written down this question, okay? the question's there and you should have the title at the top, okay? I want you to write a subheading, tips on points. Okay, now the most basic thing that people don't do when they write a point in their paragraph is they don't answer the question. They just say something that they figured out from the text. So the first thing that I want you to write down is make sure you answer the question. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to use words from the question, which some people do prefer to do. You can answer a question without repeating the key words, but you need to be being specific. So this question that we've got here is, what is the UN's opinion on gender equality? I wouldn't then start talking about something completely irrelevant about gender inequality. I need to focus on what the UN, and that's kind of the article where it's from, the United Nations, what their opinion is, and I need to make sure I'm focusing on the idea of gender equality and not talking about anything else. Okay, so you're giving your idea, your response to that question, and make it really clear what you're saying. Okay, another thing that we need to do, okay, is to avoid using the quotation or words from the quotation. What you should be doing at this point in your point is giving your idea. Okay, and you shouldn't need to give words from the quotation. At kind of the most basic, you can paraphrase what your quotation is going to be, what your evidence is going to be. Okay. Let's just have a look back up here. Okay, and the final thing is, where possible, try to explain your idea and we'll put in brackets, a point should never be too short or too long. And what I mean by that is there's a real balance between saying something too quickly, just like, I think the UN think gender equality is important, or the UN think gender equality is important. What I need to do, if I'm going to say that, I need to explain why they think it's important. And that doesn't fully really explain my point, and it's kind of an obvious thing, isn't it? But also, I don't want to say something like, the UN think gender equality is important because they want to show how women during the coronavirus have been disadvantaged, and also because I don't want it to be too long. I don't want to ramble and waffle on. I need just a clear point that answers the question, explains my idea, and then obviously I go off into giving my evidence and zooming in on methods and words. Okay? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look back to this article and we're going to make some really clear points that fit all those top tips that you've just written down. So if we go back to the question was, what is the UN's opinion on gender equality? So the first thing I want you to do is just to do another subheading. And we go back to this article here and we're going to just start with each of the things we've highlighted, okay? So, in this first bit, we've highlighted that gender equality is a fundamental human right, okay? So let's start with that and let's write a clear point. Now remember the tips that we're following. Let's just go back down to those. The tips that we've already had. So we need to answer the question, give a clear idea, not use the quotation, and try to explain it. So, we are not just going to write, the UN think gender equality is a human right, because then we're just stealing the words here and we're not giving our own idea, okay? So, the UN believe gender equality is something all people deserve. Okay, so my quotation here is obviously going to go on and back that up, the idea of it being a fundamental human right. I've answered the question, so let's just make sure we fit all these top tips. So I've answered the question here, haven't I? Because I've talked about what the UN believe. So that's me clearly answering the question. I've given my opinion, and I've not used the words from my quotation. And I've clearly explained it. So I could have just said gender equality is a human right. It's not really explaining and answering the question, is it? Okay, and I've avoided it being too long or too short. Okay, so that there is my very first example point. Let's do another one. They say that gender equality is a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable world. So they're talking about how gender equality impacts every part of the world and how we live. Okay, so another word for world, maybe society or community. So I'm starting to think about how I can paraphrase what they've said. Okay, so the UN argue that gender equality, so again I'm picking out those words from the question, will lead to, so I'm talking about society. I don't want to use the word, it would be really easy to just use the word peaceful, prosperous or sustainable, but I'm going to use those words when I do the rest of my paragraph, aren't I? So I don't want to repeat myself. If a world is peaceful, prosperous and sustainable, then it's going to be a healthy society. Okay, it's going to be a productive society, because prosperous is often to do with money, and peaceful means it's going to be safe. Okay, so it will lead to a safe and happy, we can say society, we can say environment, we can say, we don't want to say world because that's in the quotation, so I'm going to use society. Okay, so again, let's just double check that fits the criteria. So yeah, I've answered the question, used terms from the question to make it really clear what I'm talking about, but what I've also done is rephrase it in my own words and give a really clear point, an idea from the article. Okay, we'll do one more. So I'm going to use these two quotations together. So I want to use this here, progress over the last decades, and they then talk about many challenges. Okay, so I'm going to put those two ideas together. Okay, so I'm going to have to phrase it slightly different. So I'm going to say, whilst the UN recognise the progress, hang on a minute, have we used the word, is the word progress in the article? Yeah, we don't want to use progress, because I don't want to use something that I'm going to potentially use for a quotation. Oh, I just rubbed it all out. Let's try that again. So I want to go back to recognise the improvements around gender equality. Now I want to talk about the challenges, right? Because that's what's mentioned in the article, but I don't want to use the same word. Whilst the UN recognise the improvements around gender equality, they feel that there are still issues to be resolved. Okay, so that's our third example sentence. So the UN records, we've got clearly answering the question, we're using those keywords from the question. We've not just repeated our quotations, we've paraphrased it and used our own ideas. And notice how we've had to use that comma to really explain our point, okay, because we needed to just qualify what we were saying, okay? So there are some tips on how to write a really clear and focused point, and hopefully you'll have a chance to give your points about the Emma Watson article later on this week.